When you think of the word resilience, what comes to mind? Maybe a scientist in a lab coat studying brain scans and stress hormones. You might picture complex theories born in the quiet halls of a university. But that's only part of the story. The real laboratories where resilience was first truly understood weren't labs at all. They were the darkest places of human experience, prison camps, where every sunrise was a question mark, hospital bedsides filled with the unspoken grief of the dying, and the workshops of ridiculed inventors littered with the ashes of failed dreams. The textbook rules for how to endure, how to bounce back, how to find light in absolute darkness, they weren't written first, they were lived. They were paid for in suffering and discovered through sheer desperate will. These are the human stories that offer profound insights into the science of resilience, and they reveal a powerful truth. The power to endure isn't always something we learn, but something we uncover. For a long time, many of us were told a simple story about resilience, that it's a trait, a kind of inner toughness some people are just born with. You either have it or you don't. But what if that idea doesn't capture the whole picture? What if resilience isn't a magical quality, but a set of very specific, observable skills? That's the revolutionary idea that has transformed modern psychology. And it's an idea that wasn't just discovered by studying the strong, but by studying those who had been broken. It came from looking closely at the survival of those who had lost everything. While the formal study of resilience began in the 1970s with researchers like Michael Rudder and Emmy Werner, who studied children thriving against the odds, the human foundations for it were laid decades earlier. The science of human resilience wasn't just built on theory, it was informed by biography. It was extracted from the lives of people who were pushed past the imaginable limits of human suffering and somehow found a way forward. Today, we're going to explore 3 of those lives, 3 stories that, without intending to, provided powerful case studies for our understanding of how to overcome adversity. We'll meet a tortured prisoner of war who found freedom in a concentration camp, a compassionate psychiatrist who gave the world a language for loss, and a mocked inventor who treated catastrophic failure as his greatest collaborator. Their stories aren't just inspirational tales, they are field notes from the edge of human experience. They are the blueprints that revealed 3 core skills we now associate with resilience: the power of purpose, the permission to process, and the art of the reframe. And by understanding their journeys, we can learn to apply these same world-changing skills to the challenges of our own lives. Our story begins in 1944, in the chilling shadow of the Holocaust. A young, brilliant Austrian psychiatrist named Viktor Frankl is shoved out of a cattle car. He spent 3 years in 4 different concentration camps, including a brief transit through Auschwitz and longer periods in camps like Dachau. In a moment, everything is taken from him. His family is herded away, most of them to their deaths. His clothes are stripped, his head is shaved, and with them goes his most prized possession, a manuscript he had spent years writing, a book that contained his life's work. That manuscript was the first draft of what would become the science of logotherapy, a psychology built on the human search for meaning. And now it was gone. Frankl was now just a number. He was thrust into a world of starvation, disease, and casual brutality, where the odds of survival were astronomically low. He witnessed men, stripped of all dignity and hope, simply give up. They would lie down in their bunks and refuse to move, waiting for the inevitable. He saw that the prisoners who seemed to die first were not always the physically weakest, but those who had lost all sense of purpose. They were the ones who believed their lives were over, who had no future to look forward to, no reason to endure one more day of horror. And in that abyss of despair, Frankl had a profound realization. He realized that while the Nazis could take his family, his freedom, and his life's work, there was one thing they could never take from him: the freedom to choose his attitude in any given set of circumstances. This wasn't just a comforting thought, it was a survival strategy. While others saw only a hopeless present, Frankl began to force his mind into the future. He conducted tiny, secret experiments in purpose. During brutal forced labor, digging in the frozen earth, he'd imagine himself in a warm lecture hall after the war. He'd picture himself explaining the psychology of the concentration camp he was currently living in. He would mentally reconstruct his lost manuscript, chapter by chapter. That future purpose gave his present suffering a meaning. The pain was no longer just pain. It was research. It was raw material for the message he knew he had to deliver to the world. He began to apply this to his fellow prisoners on the brink of suicide. He wouldn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, he would ask them pointed questions about their why. He'd remind one man of his beloved child waiting in a foreign country. He'd remind another of a scientific series he had written, a work that only he could finish. He would find their unique, irreplaceable purpose and hold it up like a shield against the darkness. He proved that as long as a person has a why to live, they can bear almost any how. This harrowing real-world experiment became the foundation for what Frankl would call logotherapy, from the Greek word logos, meaning meaning. Logotherapy is a school of psychology built on a simple, radical idea. The primary driving force in human beings is not pleasure, as Freud believed, or power, as Adler argued, but the search for meaning. Frankl observed that those who survived the camps were often the ones who could find meaning in their suffering, whether it was love for another person, a creative work to complete, or the dignity of bearing an unavoidable fate with courage. His experience gave us one of the most critical ideas in resilience: the power of choice. In a situation where you have zero control over the big picture, the war, the camp, the guards, you can still exert total control over the small picture, your inner world. You can choose to find beauty in a sunset over the barbed wire. You can choose to share a crust of bread. You can choose to imagine a better future. It's the art of focusing your mental energy not on the overwhelming things you can't change, but on the one thing you can: your response. It's like being trapped in a landslide. You can't stop the mountain from falling, but you can control your breathing. You can look for a small pocket of air. That is the essence of Frankl's discovery. So, what does a psychiatrist from a concentration camp have to teach us today? Everything. We all face moments where we feel powerless, where life circumstances feel too big to handle. In those moments, Frankl's lesson is not to try and fix everything at once. Your task is to find your 1 square inch of control. It's to ask yourself, what is the one thing, no matter how small, that I can choose right now? Maybe you can't fix your financial problems overnight, but you can make one phone call. Maybe you can't heal a broken relationship today, but you can choose not to send that angry text. Maybe you can't defeat the anxiety that plagues you, but you can step outside and focus on the feeling of the sun on your face for 30 seconds. As Frankl famously wrote, everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Resilience begins not by changing our circumstances, but by choosing our response to them. Find the one thing you can control, and you will find your meaning. Our second story takes us not to a prison camp, but to a place just as filled with quiet suffering: the corridors of American hospitals in the 1960s. And our second pioneer is a Swiss-American psychiatrist named Elisabeth Kübler-Ross. Her work wasn't born from a single personal tragedy, but from a radical act of empathy. It was born from her refusal to look away from the suffering of others. In the mid-20th century, death was often treated as a medical failure. It was something to be hidden, ignored, and rarely spoken about. Terminally ill patients were often not told their prognosis. They were isolated, left alone with their fear and grief, while doctors and nurses bustled about, treating the disease but ignoring the human being inside. Kübler-Ross found this practice deeply impersonal. She was convinced that these patients had something to teach us, that their experience held a vital wisdom the world needed to hear. So she did something that was, at the time, unheard of. She started pulling up a chair. She began sitting at the bedsides of dying patients, not as a doctor with a clipboard, but as a fellow human being. And she simply asked, "What is it like?" At first, the medical establishment was resistant, but she persisted. Patient by patient, interview by interview, she began to listen to the unspoken language of the dying. She listened to their anger at a life cut short, their desperate pleas to God for a little more time, their profound sadness over all they were leaving behind. And as she listened, she began to notice a pattern, a rhythm. It wasn't a neat, tidy progression, but a messy, swirling dance of emotions. She saw people retreat into denial, pretending their diagnosis wasn't real. She saw them lash out in anger, asking, "Why me?" She saw them try to bargain with fate. She saw them sink into a deep depression, mourning the loss of their own life. And finally, she saw many of them arrive at a place of quiet acceptance. These compassionate bedside conversations became the raw data for one of the most influential psychological models of the 20th century, the 5 stages of grief. Published in her groundbreaking 1969 book on death and dying, the stages, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, gave the world a vocabulary for loss. It's crucial to understand what this model is and what it isn't. Kübler-Ross never intended it to be a rigid linear checklist. She later regretted that it was misunderstood that way and clarified that grief is more of a roller coaster, with people cycling through the stages, sometimes in minutes, sometimes over years, and often revisiting them. Its power was not in prescription, but in description. It normalized the chaotic and frightening emotions that come with loss. It told people, you are not going crazy. Your anger is normal. Your sadness is a necessary part of healing. Her work became a cornerstone of what we now call meaning-making in the face of loss. She showed that resilience isn't about getting over a tragedy. It's not about bouncing back to who you were before. It's about integrating the loss into your life and finding a way to bounce forward. The process of moving through the stages, of allowing yourself to fully feel the anger and the sadness, is what can ultimately allow you to find a new sense of normalcy. Her work gave millions of people permission to grieve. The genius of Kübler-Ross's model is that its application extends far beyond death. The 5 stages have been used to understand the emotional response to almost any major life disruption: a divorce, the loss of a job, a frightening diagnosis, or even a global pandemic. Her work gives you a map for navigating your own emotional landscape during times of hardship. When you lose something you love and you find yourself furious at the world, you can recognize it. This is anger. This is a stage. It's okay to be here. When a deep, heavy sadness descends, you can name it. This is depression. It's part of the process. This act of naming and normalizing is incredibly powerful. It takes the emotion out of the driver's seat and allows you to observe it without judgment. It transforms you from a victim of your feelings into a student of them. Kübler-Ross's great gift to resilience was the permission slip, the permission to be messy, to be angry, to be sad, and to take as long as you need to find your way towards acceptance. Resilience isn't about not feeling bad, it's about knowing how to feel bad and trusting that on the other side of that feeling is a way forward. These two stories already reveal so much about the human capacity to endure. Frankl shows us the power of purpose from within, and Kübler-Ross shows us the power of processing from without. Both are skills we can cultivate. And I'm curious, which of these ideas resonates more with you? Have you ever found strength by focusing on a future purpose, or by giving yourself permission to simply feel the weight of a loss? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be the one that someone else needs to read today to feel a little less alone. And if you're finding value in this exploration of where resilience really comes from, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. In our final chapter, we're going to look at the one skill that ties it all together, a skill demonstrated by one of history's most famous failures.
Our final story moves from the darkness of human suffering to the bright, chaotic glare of public failure. It's the story of a man whose teacher once called him addled, leading his mother to pull him from school and teach him at home. That boy would go on to become one of the most prolific inventors in modern history, Thomas Edison. Edison's name is synonymous with the light bulb, but it should be equally synonymous with failure. We've all heard the famous statistic: he tried thousands of different filaments before finding one that worked. The exact number is debated, but the principle is what matters. Imagine the sheer, soul-crushing monotony of failing day after day for years. Most people would have given up, but Edison's mindset was fundamentally different. When asked about it, his response became legendary. He said, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Pause on that for a moment. That isn't just a witty comeback, it's a perfect demonstration of one of the most powerful psychological tools in existence. He wasn't experiencing failure, he was gathering data. Each burned-out filament wasn't a mistake, it was a lesson, it was a step forward. This capacity for reframing was put to the ultimate test in December 1914. A massive explosion tore through Edison's sprawling factory complex in West Orange, New Jersey. The fire was catastrophic, fueled by flammable chemicals. Within hours, more than 10 buildings containing much of his life's work, priceless prototypes, irreplaceable notes, and equipment were reduced to a smoldering ruin. Edison, 67 years old at the time, watched his legacy go up in smoke. His son, Charles, ran to find him, panicked, expecting to see his father broken. Instead, he found Edison calm, his face illuminated by the flames. Edison's words to his son were surreal. "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." When Charles expressed his shock, Edison simply added, "It's all right, we've just got rid of a lot of rubbish." The very next morning, with the ruins still smoking, Edison gathered his employees. He announced, "I am 67, but I'll start all over again tomorrow." And they did. Within 3 weeks, some parts of the factory were running again, and within a year, they were generating more revenue than ever before. Edison's astonishing reaction is a perfect case study for the third great skill of resilience, cognitive reframing. A cornerstone of modern cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, it's the conscious ability to change your perspective on an event, to change your emotional response to it. Edison understood, intuitively, that the event itself, the fire, was neutral. It was just a thing that happened. Its meaning was not in the flames. Its meaning was determined by his interpretation of it. Where others saw a tragic disaster, he saw a splendid cleanup. Where others saw loss, he saw an opportunity for a fresh start. He didn't deny the reality of the event, but he chose the story he told himself about it. This is fundamentally different from simple positive thinking. It's not about pretending a bad thing is good.
It's about actively looking for the opportunity embedded within the adversity. It's about changing the question from, "Why did this happen to me?" to, "What does this make possible?" Edison's whole career was an exercise in this. A failed experiment wasn't a failure, it was the successful discovery of a way that won't work. A catastrophic fire wasn't an ending, it was a new beginning. He used setbacks as springboards. This skill is perhaps the most practical and immediately applicable of the three. Every day, you face small setbacks and frustrations. Your car gets a flat tire, a project at work is criticized, an important plan falls through. In each of these moments, you have a choice, just like Edison. You can see the flat tire as a disaster that's ruined your day, or you can reframe it as an unexpected chance to listen to that podcast you've been saving, or a moment to finally learn how to change a tire yourself. You can see the criticism at work as a personal attack, or you can reframe it as valuable data that will make your next project stronger. The practice is simple, but not always easy. The next time you face a setback, no matter how small, consciously ask yourself Edison's question: what is the opportunity here? Or what mistake just got burned up, allowing me to start fresh? By actively reframing the minor adversities of daily life, you are building your resilience muscle. You are training your brain to see opportunity in difficulty, so that when a truly big fire comes along, your first instinct won't be despair, but a calm, determined curiosity to see what you can build from the ashes. So, we have a prisoner of war, a compassionate witness to grief, and a relentlessly optimistic inventor. Three completely different lives, from three completely different worlds, and yet their stories converge on powerful truths about human resilience. From Viktor Frankl in the depths of the concentration camps, we learned the first skill: find your purpose. He taught us that even when all external control is lost, our internal freedom to choose our attitude and focus on a future meaning is untouchable. Suffering, he showed, ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. From Elisabeth Kübler-Ross at the bedsides of the dying, we learned the second skill: permission to process. She gave us a map for the messy, non-linear journey of grief, teaching us that resilience isn't about ignoring pain, but about moving through it. We must allow ourselves to feel the denial, the anger, and the sadness to ever reach acceptance. And from Thomas Edison, standing in the ashes of his life's work, we learned the third skill: the art of the reframe. He demonstrated that no event is inherently negative. Its power over us is determined by the story we tell ourselves about it. By reframing failure as data and disaster as opportunity, we can transform setbacks into fuel. Purpose, processing, reframing. These are not magical traits gifted to a lucky few. They are skills. They are mental muscles that can be trained. They are the practical, actionable secrets that were illuminated by some of the most extreme examples of human survival. The science of resilience wasn't born only in a lab. It was forged in fire. It was whispered in concentration camps and hospital wards. It was built on the human stories that prove that trauma doesn't just have to be something we survive. It can be the very thing that transforms us. These pioneers, through their own unimaginable struggles, helped us decode the formula for human endurance and left it behind as a gift for all of us. Their lives are the ultimate proof that within every challenge lies a choice, and within that choice lies our power.